Well, hey guys, and welcome to another episode in our Tribulation Soldier Columns YouTube and Facebook. And as you can see, we're in the house. It is very, very cold in Scotland at the moment. And the gas prices have been hiked up quite a bit, so pretty cool stuff going on, So I thought I'd maybe do this in the house rather than down in the garage where we normally are. This is just a couple of sermons about our qualifications, about our history, about why we are pastors and we do what we do. And guys, this is extremely important, very, very important indeed. And I'll try and skip through as much as I possibly can. And it's certainly not boring. There's so many different things that has happened from the time I was called until where we are now. So I'll do the very best I can to give you an overview of that. But for now guys, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit notifications. That'll be awesome and you won't miss a video. Yeah, so we're in the house, so the boiler might click on now and again, might get a knock at the door, might get Bailey going in and out the cat flap, or little Jack Russell, There you go. So yeah, throughout this, I don't know if it's going to be maybe 2 or 3. We'll just sort of see how it goes. But the question I want you to bear in mind, really, really bear in mind, is this: would you allow an unqualified surgeon to operate on a member of your family, like a child or your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever? I mean, would you? If a surgeon sort of said to you, "Yeah, I think I can do that operation. I should be okay. I've done it like twice or something. I'm sure it'll be fine." You would immediately, especially all you guys that know about going through surgery like me, that you just wouldn't allow it. You just would not do it. Unfortunately, guys, and you're in the sphere of Christianity in the world, it's never changed since biblical times. There's false teachers, there are people out there doing their own thing that aren't qualified to do what they're doing. They don't have the authority to do it either. And I really want to share with you our journey. I really want to show you, because when I move on to bigger teachings like the end times, for example, the end times of mankind, the tribulation, the Antichrist, all those sort of things, you guys need to see that all comes from somewhere. It's not just something I've studied and I'm just sharing with you now. I've shared this on many occasions publicly, held events, held Sunday morning sermons, being a pastor, and all that is really, really important to where we are today. So just a quick overview, guys. When I was 9 years old, I actually got a prophecy, which for those of you that don't know, is a word that you get that's inspired by God. And that actually came from my grandmother when I was 9, which was really, really awesome. So I knew from a very young age that, I was going to be working for God at some point. And of course, it was round about that time when I'd actually given my life to Jesus when I was 9. And generally that's a little bit young for most people, but I just knew it. I knew then I really wanted to commit my life to God, and I had this major experience, a really shaken experience. It was really quite something. Unfortunately, we got the sort of lure of the nightclubs, and I fell away from God for quite some time. But then we came back to God in 2002, myself and Sharon, and we obviously got married and baptised in the particular church we were in. But it was during that time where we had a visiting preacher in 2002, a guy called John Paul Jackson, and he's actually passed away now. He's on to be with the Lord, and he was in our hometown in 2002, and there was I think there was a couple of hundred people there or something, and he'd done a sermon, and it was really good. I was really enjoying it, and I was as always scribbling down notes, to have a look at it later and stuff, But when he'd finished, he kind of pointed at me and Sharon. And of course, when the prophecy comes, with a prophecy, it also sort of tells you about who you are and what's to come. And of course, with John Paul Jackson, we'd never met before. So when he gives you a truth that you could never have known, then it really does, hit you like a train. And not only that, you get that prophecy for the future. And at the time he said to me that I was in business, and of course was at that particular point in time. And that our son, my stepson, Sharon's son from a previous marriage, had learning difficulties at the time. And he said, that you've got a younger child there that's got learning difficulties, but God's going to fix that. And I was just, I knew, because I'm a generational Christian, I've seen stuff like this before, but never to myself. And I was absolutely blown away. And what John Paul said was that we were going to be evangelists, we're going to preach to all the nations. That's what we were going to do in the future. So that then started off this journey. And I come back to God in such a way that, I was a bit of a liar and a manipulator. You know, that's kind of the person I was. And it was never really malicious or to hurt people or anything like that. It was just because I was so unhappy, you know, and it tended to be these lies were a lot more interesting than the truth, you know. And, you know, manipulation was just the way I kind of did things to get things and so on, you know. And that's like a lot of people, you know. So when I came back to God, after I'd seen what I'd done, where I'd been, I wanted everything to be just like right, you know. Here's this God, this real God that you actually experience in your life, and this truth that is absolutely real, you know, really, 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 really real. So at that time, you know, I was looking at it in the prophecy, and I said to the Lord, I cannot do this if I'm going to be wrong. You know, that I'm going to take a wrong path, or if I believe the wrong thing. I just can't do it. And I knew that within myself. I'd rather just not do it. So I think God really took me at my word, you know. And I'd seen within the scriptures already that there was a specific path that you take through the, you know, when you look in the New Testament, there's a specific path, and I thought, I want that. You know, I really, really want that. And again, I'll get into that some other time. You know, it's in 1 Timothy 3, it's the qualifications to be an overseer within what we call the body of Christ, the worldwide church. And yes, of course, for me, it was just the word, what we called, as Christians, we call the word, the scriptures, you know. And of course, it's not just a book, and it's not just a belief system. It's a living word, you know, it's something that's very real, that starts off as seeds and blossoms into trees and shrubs. You know, it's amazing how it affects your life, you know. And of course, with that, you just had this tremendous truth all the time, and I'd felt like I'd always just been living in this bubble of lies, you know. And I looked back and I thought, did some of these things actually happen, or did I just lie about it and believe it? You know, that's how bad things were. But here we are with God, absolute reality, like cold water, you know, like a big glass of ice water on a scorching hot day. Just really, that's how it felt, you know. So I studied a lot, you know. And I think the first time that I ever took like an overseer role was when I became a cell church leader. And again, for those of you who don't know, when a church gets to a congregation gets to a various size, it's very difficult for the senior pastor to take care of all that. So he appoints elder Christians, or, you know, leader Christians in that, and splits it all up, you know. And that's obviously a brilliant way to do things. But I'd been chosen to oversee one, and I knew within myself, you know, that I wasn't ready for it. But, you know, you've got this calling in your life, and you think, well, maybe I've just got to tough this through and go for it, you know. And it wasn't good. I didn't really enjoy it at all. Like the first 2 or 3 times, you have that honeymoon period, and the nights that you meet and you preach and you teach and stuff like that, you know. But I was in my 20s then, and I sort of found myself in an area where it was like, I'm dealing with people with marital issues, and I'm just married, you know. People have got major problems going on with kids and their family and all these sorts of things, you know. And I'm just so inexperienced. And what really happened through that was that it really dented my confidence. I just couldn't get it right. You know, that was the worst part. I just couldn't get this right no matter what I did. And of course, with God, you always sort of look to him and say, well, if I'm meant to do this, you give me the strength, the energy, and everything I need to do that. But the fact is, guys, God can do that. But you have to have the experience. There's absolutely no question about it. And that's like I said about an unqualified surgeon. You're speaking into people's lives. They're listening to you. They'll actually probably do what you advise them to do. And you could destroy relationships. You could really hurt families. You could hurt children. So, you know, it's so hugely important. But in the end, you know, when it came to that part, I think it was about 2004, I think that, you know, 2002 we came back, I'd begun to fall ill with ulcerative colitis, like I spoke about in the testimonies. So it actually came to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore, you know. And my senior pastor at the time said, you know, you're obviously very ill, take this time out, you know, you've really got to focus on yourself and your family and all that. And of course, I didn't want to, you know, I toughed through just about anything back then. But I just really had to listen to what he had to say and do it, you know. And he said, no, you just can't do it. That came from experience. He knew that. Me, inexperienced at the time, I thought something was sort of being taken away from me. Yeah, so then it started the whole ulcerative colitis thing, you know. And of course, very common today, IBD, Crohn's, colitis. I had ulcerative colitis. And that was really going to take up the next 4 years of our lives, you know. A lot of pain, two major operations, weeks on end in hospital, you know, so many different drug treatments and morphine and, you know, all that sort of stuff. But here I was, being a family man, I had a lot of time on my hands, you know. It was uncomfortable, it was sore, but, you know, you had good parts of the day that you could relax and just try and, you know, get on through till night time. And it was then I really began to study God's word in a very in-depth way, you know. And I prayed and asked the Lord, I said, Lord, please give me something, you know, give me something really real to study, something structured. And what he gave me, and I won't go on about it too much, but was a teaching called the First Principles of the Oracles of God, which they call the foundational doctrine. And it's all the basic stuff in the Christian life, the most important things in the Christian life. And I went on to study that. And it wasn't just a study. We were going through stuff at the time, so those studies were actually happening in real life, you know. God, during that time, took away so many poisonous traits of mine during that time. I mean, just really poisonous. Fearfulness, this is a huge one for anyone. Fearfulness, pride, lust, you know, he took away all those sort of major traits, you know, really showed them up for what they were and took them away. And what you find is that when you do get set forward in the ministry, I'll get on to in just a second, you find that you really needed this to be rid of this stuff. The pride, the lust, all those things. You've got this position of authority where people trust you, people are vulnerable. So through that time, although it was very difficult, I would not trade that time. And I'm saying, from the way I was before to the way I am now, I would not trade that experience at all, because it made me the pastor, it made me the preacher and teacher I was going to be. Yes, these things are not all bad, you know. During that 4 years, guys, I know it might look dark, you know. It's certainly, sometimes I don't like listening to the testimonies of people going through this stuff, you know, because I know it's quite hurtful. But during that time, it's far from just dark all the time, you know. God just, when you're in a situation like that, God speaks to you so clearly, you know, and you really haven't got any distractions of work or any of these things happening, and your mind is very open to God, you know. And the way I've always done things in study, you've got to put the effort in. You know, we always say that the Holy Spirit, God's Holy Spirit, reveals things to you in your heart and in your mind. He's the one that helps you understand all these things. You still got to study. And obviously, guys, in some respects, when it comes to study, you know, it's just like anything else in the world. You know, if you want to be the best at it or good at it, good, great, best, whatever you want to call it, you study. You exhaust all areas. You go down so many different roads trying to understand this, trying to understand that. But it's during those times where God has a way of confirming to you, saying, right, we've got that right now. Do you understand that? You know, it's really quite something, you know, because you think, aye, that is the truth. That is the absolute truth of the scriptures. And the more important part is the mind of God, of who he really is. And having that calling, I knew and I said to the Lord, I never want to put you across in the wrong light. You've got to show me who you are. I mean, very seriously, this is how most, you know, Christians talk to God, guys. I need to know I'm on the right path, that I've got it right. I've got to have it right, and I've got to be confident in the fact that I've got it right. And that was God. You know, that's God kind of, you know, it's not manipulation. He just bends your will a little bit so, you know, you see things a little bit more clearly, you know. But you do, and you obsess about the teachings, and you go and you go and you go and you go until it's all done, you know. And it's after that and all the experiences that you've just had, you know, that really how God makes you become the person that you need to be for the ministry. So of course, you know, when ulcerative colitis was over, that was it, you know, and it's not getting life back to normal. It was a recovery. You know, there's a great recovery period. You know, I had a new sort of zest for life. I was obviously not ill anymore, which was great. 2 months after the second operation, it was just, I felt so different. You know, it was really good. No more of that, you know, pains and awful stomach cramps and, you know, the ulcers and tiredness and all that. Getting my large bowel removed and my rectal stump. Now I've got a colostomy bag. It was just the best. It really was. And it transformed our family. Yeah, so by the time 2009 came around, this is when we really got what we call in the Christian life being set forward. And of course, by that time, you know, I'd been a cell church overseer. We'd now gone through that 4 years of real difficulty. We'd had about a year of just things just really turning around, and it's just really good. And the church was part of at the time. And I never thought of doing youth work, but here we were, you know, being offered this youth pastor role. And of course, again, you know, I'd seen the qualifications of being that overseer. And I looked to God and I said, well, I know that we've went through all these things, but am I ready? Is this the right way for me to go? And that's always such a big thing as a Christian. You always want God to confirm. And when he confirms, you've got that confidence. You can go forward and do it, you know. And I had to say, well, Lord, you know, I know that many are called, but few are chosen. Am I chosen? Is this my role? And of course, God's confirmed, which was absolutely tremendous. And we got set forward in the biblical manner, which is laying on of hands from a senior overseer and being set forward into that ministry. But before you get to that moment, and of course, a youth pastor is not an assistant pastor, it's not a senior pastor, you're the youth pastor. And it's no less important, you know, it just takes a bit of a different Christian to be able to do it. But before I got to do any of that, I had to serve the church. That's what I was there to do. And I did all those things, you know, the serving the coffees and the teas. This is pretty old, guys, if you're watching, but with a projector, you know, where you write on this clear plastic and put it on a light and up it goes, you know. So I do that in the mornings, you know, the worship music and notices and stuff like that, you know. And I did that for quite some time, you know. And that's something you've really got to do. It's a biblical model, you know, that you serve the church first. You serve before you ever get set forward into a position like that. So by that time, I'd actually come. And I always say it's God that qualified me to do it. I would have failed multiple times if it wasn't for him. But it's God that brought me to that place where now I was going to be set forward into a public position of authority in many ways, but huge responsibility. And that was the thing about youth work, for example. That was a huge responsibility. I can't say it more seriously, guys, that we would not allow an unqualified surgeon to work on our children, our parents, our boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. We just would not do it. And like I said, unfortunately in the world, it was the same in biblical times, it's the same now. There's false teachers, there are people out there just doing it for the money, the notoriety, just whatever. There's a lot of really good, caring people that are maybe doing it with the wrong heart, the wrong intentions. But guys, that is a minority in the sphere of Christianity in the world. I have connected over the years with so many amazing churches and amazing pastors, just absolutely tremendous, you know. And some of the stories I'll share throughout this, you know, the qualifications for being an overseer. Some of the situations are quite tough, very tough, in fact, you know, church splits, betrayal, you know, all these different things that can happen, you know. So yeah, I can't wait to share with you about the youth and young adults time. That was just awesome. It was one of the most favourite times in the ministry, you know. And, you know, as we move on, when I went to be an assistant pastor, and then, of course, what happens in an area like this a lot is that you can't really move on to be a senior pastor in this area. You'll see from my testimonies, I've got quite a history in this town, and I think that me being the senior pastor would have been damaging more than anything else. And I think Christians understand that. You know, it's you know, we've got to be very wise in what we're doing. But in this series, guys, I just want to show you these things, you know. And I'll come back to it again. Would you allow an unqualified surgeon to operate on a family member? The answer is no. You know, the answer is completely a big, big no. And this is why it's so important that I prove to you that I'm showing you who we are, confirmable that this is who we are and what we've done. So guys, thank you so much for listening. I've been trying to share these in such a way that if you've never been in the sphere of Christianity, as it were, trying to say it in such a way that you might understand.
Christians kind of get all this. This is how the community works, you know. But if you're looking in from somewhere else, it can be like, so I'm trying my best to be like that. So yeah, I hope you've really enjoyed. A few more of these to come. You know, we'll just work our way right to where we are just now. You know, tell you some stories and tell you some major challenges, various things like that. You know, but also some major blessings, great moments of God and stuff like that. You know, and hopefully that'll build a picture of who you are. So again, guys, thank you so much. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit notifications. I am a pastor, but I'm also a YouTuber, you know, so you've got to see that. And as always, you know, we've got our Barney Family channel where I do motorbike vlogs and Scottish castle tours and all sorts of stuff. And David and Emily, my kids, have got 3 channels. They've got Barney Family Fun, Barney Family Fun Shorty Shorts, and Barney Family Fun Gaming. So if you've got kids, I hope you enjoy that. But for now, guys, as I always say, always going to be here. God bless you.